So here we have these two are thoracic vertebrae, and this one is a lumbar vertebrae. And I put two of the thoracic so you can see how it sort of transitions from being sort of looking like a giraffe to at the end being like looking like a moose. So there's a transition from one type of vertebrae to the other type of vertebrae. But none of these will have the main characteristic of the cervical vertebrae, which was the transverse foramen. So both the thoracic and the lumbar will lack the transverse foramen. Now what the thoracic vertebrae has that the others do not have is that they have what we call a costal facet. So over here is the costal facet that will articulate with the rib. So you have this flat part over here on top of the body would be the superior costal facet, and on the bottom of the body is the inferior costal facet. These two will articulate with the head of the rib. And we have another costal facet which is called the transverse costal facet, which is located on the transverse process, and this transverse costal facet will articulate with the tubercle of the rib. Here we have the superior articular facet of the thoracic vertebrae. Over here would be the spinous process, and down here is the inferior articular facet. Now this one is here because since they transition, the last two vertebrae, sometimes the last three vertebrae, they do not have a superior and an inferior costal facet. They only have one costal facet right in the middle of the body. So it's not called superior or inferior costal facet, it's just called a costal facet. But you're going to have the spinous process again, the superior articular facet, the body, the vertebral foramen over here, and then on the back inferior you're going to have the inferior articular facets. When we move on to the lumbar, it does not have the costal facet, and like I said, it does not have the transverse foramen. It just has a really big body, and it will have the vertebral foramen over here. It will have the transverse process on each side, the superior articular facet, the spinous process, and on the bottom you're going to have the inferior articular facet.